Thank you, Andy. I hope everyone's all excited and ready for auditing for the S.A.F.E Act. I always love the acronym, so, S.A.F.E Act isn't really all of it. It's Secure and Fair Enforcement for Mortgage Licensing Act. I don't know what they did with the ML. Maybe they thought that would just be a little too cumbersome, and S.A.F.E Act was really kind of cute. What we're going to go over today, I hope we have a good mix in the audience, that this is specifically for those of us who are trying to test your financial institution's compliance with the requirements from the federal regulators. But hopefully we also have some individuals who are actually doing this work, and by looking and seeing what we, the auditors, are doing, that you can prepare and know that you're doing it correctly. But the biggest part to any compliance issue is documentation, trying to prove that you're doing this correctly. So there's a lot of things that we do and we don't have in writing, and if it ain't in writing, it didn't happen. So this is going to help you know what we're looking for, and so you know how to go about documenting that. So please ask your questions as we go. Hopefully I'll be able to get them all answered for you. So in our agenda today, we're going to go over definitions, because you always have to have definitions. That helps us understand what we do, what we don't do. We'll look at policies and procedures. We'll look at the actual registration and the use of that unique identifier. Now, what I have is that I have 2 work papers that we'll be referring to, and these are things that I use when I'm doing my reviews. And so with any regulation, we have both policies and procedures that we're going to look at. And the reason for that is that your policies kind of state what we're going to do, and the procedures are then how we actually go about doing this. So if you've ever heard me do BSA training, I refer to this as a lot like your marriage vows, your wedding vows, that your vows are your procedures, your policy. And that's where you promise to love, honor, and cherish, forget obey, but love, honor, and cherish. Well, the procedures then are what you do day to day to actually reflect loving, honoring, and cherishing. So this would be where, the wife makes certain she wakes the husband up very gently with the freshly roasted coffee beans smelling through the house, instead of whacking him upside the head. So that would be how you love, honor, and cherish. And that the husband massages his wife's feet every night. So those would be ways of doing that. And so that's why we have the policies and the procedures, because the policies are going to, again, be the high-level procedures, exactly how we do that. And so we audit for those. And then we'll go into the transactional testing. And the transactional testing will be we're really going in and looking to see that we're following those policies and procedures. So let's just kind of jump in here into the S.A.F.E Act and see, why are we even talking about doing an audit? Well, it's because it's required by law that every federal regulator has the same ending, and so at 104F, this is required by law because it says that your policies and procedures must provide for independent testing for compliance with this subpart to be conducted at least annually by bank personnel or by an outside party. So this is required to be done, and this has been around for a little bit, and not everybody has gotten around to doing their audits. So this is, if you haven't already done one, this is going to help you go through that. And so, okay, so why are we doing that? Well, because it's required by law, and I frequently get bankers who will ask me when I tell them that they violated a law, so what's the penalty for doing that or not doing it? Well, in the final rule, there's a footnote. The OCC, the board, the FDIC, and the OTS, now that's all gone away, so now it also includes the CFPB, have the authority to take enforcement actions against the respective agency-regulated institutions and individual employees of those institutions who violate the S.A.F.E Act and this final rule pursuant to 12 U.S.C. 1818. So if you go out and look at that, you're going to find out that that means that they can do everything from slap on the hands to a formal written agreement to prompt corrective actions to cease and desist to, monetary and potentially criminal. So we have to comply with this. Now, when did this all come about, and why are we doing it? Well, it's because, the one bad apple thing that your mother might have told you, as mine did, one bad apple spoils the barrel. And so this is something that we had some renegade mortgage brokers, mortgage lenders who were going from state to state. It started in Florida, and they just kind of moved across the country, and there was fraud involved in each. And so that's where we get this S.A.F.E Act, and that they had to regulate, because each state had their own licensing and registering requirements. And so if you got kicked out of Florida for fraudulent or any other type of misbehavior in mortgage lending, you could just move on over then to Georgia or Alabama, or go up to Seattle and bother those people there. You could just go across the country till you've gotten through all 50 states and our territories. So now this is a national, a federal, and so that everybody's either registered or we have a licensing requirements, and that they're able to better monitor who's doing what where and who we're going to report. So that's what we're going to do. That's why, because it's required by law, and if we don't do it, then there's going to be penalties. So when are we going to do this? Again, this specifically states, and sometimes your regulations, they don't mention specifically when they would maybe have a best practice, or say periodically. Well, this one specifically states at least annually. So realize this is a minimum frequency, so we need to do this at least once a year. And I suggest that you consider using the same triggers that you do for the Bank Secrecy Act, that although there should be an annual review, that you consider doing that testing maybe more frequent if you have either frequent or large-scale personnel turnover. Maybe you have new delivery methods that, we might want to do some testing if all of a sudden we're allowing online account opening, or in this case, applying for a mortgage loan, or gathering information, or we allow our officers to email. All right, so we have some new delivery methods, so it's not all done face-to-face, person-to-person. Some of it's done by phone. Some of it's going to be done by the Internet. Sometimes we're going to be emailing. And so we need to make certain that we are covering those, because always, just like anything else, if we do our testing once a year, okay, that's good, but we had a lot of problems. Now, you're going to wait another year to find out whether or not we've corrected those problems, or your internal review ended up being okay, but there was a change to the law, or you understand from the bank down the street when you meet for hopefully some of your regional compliance meetings. I know we have one here in the Dallas area called the Dallas Area Compliance Association, and they get together, and that's where they can share stories. And so they might say, well, our examiner came in and he was looking for this, or this seems to be a new hot spot. But you might want to at least consider doing some testing in that area. So when? At least annually. So remember, that's a minimum frequency. And if you have a lot of people turning over, whether it be the mortgage loan originators or your back office, we probably want to do some more testing then. Who should conduct that testing? It does specifically state by financial institution personnel or by an outside party. So regardless, it's, again, a lot like BSA in that they should be independent of that process, because you cannot be independent and arm's length as a disinterested individual if you're involved in this. It's kind of hard to criticize your own work or the person who signs your paycheck. So they should be independent of the mortgage process, just like your BSA review does not have to be outsourced, but it should be someone who's independent of that process. Also, and please notice that I emphasize, and knowledgeable of the requirements. So where I've seen some financial institutions go wrong, whether it be for BSA or RESPA or the S.A.F.E Act, is they think, okay, we're going to go to an outside person. We're going to outsource this to third party. Well, just the fact that they're a third party, maybe an accounting firm, doesn't mean that that person is knowledgeable about these requirements. So whether it's someone in-house or you outsource this, make certain that someone who's auditing this needs to know what's required, what's prohibited. They need to fully understand this. So when you're looking at this audit, so whether you're the one doing it, you're someone who's in charge of compliance, and you're looking to either do it yourself or outsourcing, that you're looking at both prongs here. They're independent and knowledgeable. All right. So let's get into these policies and procedures and talk about the content of your policies and procedures.